and Senator Croce for the quick update on various topics and for keeping us informed. And just one thing I would add that I think it's important, Senator Croce mentioned, and we say it at our meetings all the time, if you have a problem, pick up the phone and call them. Too many times everybody lately thinks, oh, the best thing to do is go on Facebook and rant about it. No, pick up the phone and call them. They're helpful. That's what we do. When you come to us with problems, we pick up the phone and call them. And they want to help you. They want your vote. So take advantage of that. So seriously, I think that's the best advice to what Senator Croce gave. At this point, we're going to turn it over to the Meet the Candidates night for the Connecticut School Board election. We have both candidates here tonight, Eileen Panico and Robert Grable. We thank them both for being here and spending the night and answering questions. The format this evening will be each candidate is going to give a short 5-minute introduction to give you a little bit of background about themselves. After that, we're going to open it up to questions. I will basically point to you. You can stand up, ask a question. You can ask as many questions as you want. I would just ask that you do one at a time to give everybody else a chance. My only rule as far as questions is that questions must be questions. We are not going to listen to people give their position on what they feel the district should be doing. We want to know what these two people would do in certain situations. So it's not an opportunity to give a position statement or your feeling as to what is right or is wrong with the district. So I would just ask, out of respect to the two candidates here, that we keep it to questions to them, and the focus should be on them, not us. So at this point, I'm going to ask Eileen and Robert to come up. Sorry, you're going to have to share the microphone. And you can feel free, stand, sit, whatever you'd like to do. No formalities here. Choices to do.
Ladies first.
I know,
No, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
All right,
You
I'll
go
go
first.
first.
Okay.
Tonight I could read my whole thing.
Go ahead, read.
Okay.
I use notes. I have to
You
use
can have
notes for
that
everything. I don't think. Do I need the microphone? Can you all hear me?
Use the microphone.
Yes,
You don't hear very well after the fourth.
Is it on? Okay. Hi, so I'm Eileen Panico, and I'm running for the Board of Ed. My husband and I chose to live here after researching school districts from Connecticut to be where we want, and we found Connecticut to be where we wanted to raise our children. We moved here in 1996 when I was pregnant with my first child, and we have 3 children who all went through the Connecticut School District. Our eldest is in her 2nd year of college, our second is a senior and graduating this year, and our last is in 10th grade at the high school. When my children reached the age of 4, we did enroll them in CYSL, and we also coached T-ball for St. Joseph's. We've always supported the PTA, and I became a member as my children reached school age. I became very active in the PTAs when my eldest, who's now 19, was in 5th grade. I was treasurer for Duffield as well as council representative, where I attended council meetings and reported back to the units. I was also the Board of Ed alternate at that time. I continued on through RMS in the high school with active participation and volunteerism for many different events and committees. I then became the council president for 2 terms. That's the umbrella group for all 11 PTAs in our district. Our board's mission at that time was to create unity in the community by decimating the north-south divide. I currently sit on that 6-person board as the immediate past president. I'm also currently an active member of the high school PTA, and I continue to volunteer for the Duffield events, such as Halloween Fun Night, which is my absolute favorite to volunteer for. I'm an active member in the Ronkonkoma Civic Association. I became a member there 5 years ago when it was reorganized, and I actively participated in events for the community with that group. 3 years ago, I became the treasurer for 1 term, and then ran for VP, where I currently serve my 2nd term on a 9-member board. I try to support all groups in any way that I can, whether it be as a volunteer or a spectator. I love the activities that these groups provide to keep our children engaged and busy, and keep them from roaming the streets. I am an outspoken, opt-out parent, and I believe we need to do what's best for all children. I attended over 70 Board of Ed meetings in the past 4 years, and as some of you may know, I've been videotaping them since September, like I'm doing now. I believe in transparency and have been consistent in my views about this district. I fully support our teachers in this district. I've yet to meet one who doesn't put the children first. I've showed that support on many occasions and will continue to support the teachers, but I do not take sides. Rather, I take the side of what is right for the entire community by always putting the children first. I support all groups equally and do what is right for this community as a whole, and I've consistently shown that with my words and my actions. I do believe, though, in a diverse Board of Ed. A teacher, a professional, a finance person, a lawyer, a parent, a senior citizen, a special education advocate. That would be my idea of the perfect Board of Ed. Before I became actively involved in this community, I worked full-time and was the president CFO of a subcontracting firm for 10 years, where I did accounting and bookkeeping and budgeting for projects in excess of $2 million. I also handled project management and contract review along with estimates for new work. Before that, I did accounting and bookkeeping for several firms. So all in all, I have over 25 years experience in this field. 2 years ago, my husband started a trucking company, and I continued to do this accounting work from home. I've been working since I'm 14, but later in life, I went to Suffolk Community College and received my associates in accounting. I then continued to St. Joseph's College in Patchogue and matriculated into their 3-year bachelor's master's program in accounting. I do have a few more classes to complete until I receive that degree, but I put that on hold due to my husband's illness and my volunteer activities. I've volunteered on boards up to 9 people and have found that discussion can always be productive without being argumentative. No one will always agree, but there are always compromises if people are willing to talk and discuss things like adults. I feel my experience with this kind of productive discussion will be an asset to the current BOE, and I look forward to seeing everyone at the polls on May 17th. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. Thanks for having me tonight. My name is Rob Grable. I've been a Connecticut resident for 45 years. My parents who are here tonight, Bob and Barbara, are still Connecticut residents. They moved us to Bohemia when I was 1 in 1971. I'm a 1988 graduate of Connecticut High School. After graduating from Connecticut High School, I went on to St. John's University, where I earned my bachelor's degree in athletic administration with a minor in education. I had the fortunate opportunity to play baseball there. And my baseball career progressed a little bit. I got drafted in 1991, a Major League Baseball draft by the Tigers. I was traded to the Phillies. After spending 5 years in the minor league system, I came home. I went to Dowling College and earned my master's degree in elementary education. Shortly after that, I was fortunate enough to land a job at Mount Sinai Elementary School as a 4th grade teacher. My teaching career progressed quite swiftly as well. I taught 4th grade and 5th grade for several years. I was in the right spot at the right time, became the assistant principal of the middle school for 3 years, again in the right spot at the right time. The middle school principal was just retiring at that time. I became the middle school principal for 5 years, and I'm currently the high school principal at Mount Sinai High School in my 6th year. So all in all, I have 18 years in education, and I've had the opportunity to be in all 3 levels, the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school. My wife, Diana, who's here tonight, we got married in 1998. We bought a house in Oakdale. We have 3 girls. OBMS, my oldest is 12, she goes to OBMS, and then I have twins that are 10 that go to Boston. About 2 months ago, there was a seat vacated on the board, and I showed some interest in it, and the board interviewed me and selected me. While my tenure on the board is still in its infancy, I've been learning a lot along the way. So I look forward to the challenges ahead. I encourage you guys to get out and cast your vote. You have a civic responsibility to do that. And I look forward to this discussion tonight. Thanks for having me.
Do we have any questions?
All right, let's go.
I have to have some.
I will begin. I do know, I have been a Board of Ed advocate and attendee for many, many years, and I've seen Eileen at all of those 70 meetings that she attended. I would like to ask Mr. Grable, what has been your participation in Connecticut over the last 3 to 5 years that gives you a background to serve as our trustee?
Certainly not 70. I have not attended 70. I've attended a handful. This question was asked of me of the board when they were interviewing me, and I had explained to them that I have had aspirations of being a board member for several years, but my career has taken some turns. When I was asked to be the high school principal, I didn't really know what that would entail, if I would have time to be a part of this effort. And then I had 2 different superintendents, so their expectations changed. I think I have a good finger on the pulse of what my job requires me to do, which will allow me to be available at board meetings now regularly. But no, I've attended maybe 15 board meetings over the course of 2 or 3 years.
Can I ask another one?
Sure.
I've gotten literature from the Connecticut Teachers Association with your bio, and it says in there that you have a strong union affiliation. And if you remain on our Board of Education, it gives our Board of Education a majority of educators. Educators who, down the road, will make contract negotiations that will affect all of us here as taxpayers. I guess my question is, do you agree that there should be 3 union people on our school board? And how will that help us as taxpayers? What will you do to keep the taxes in check for us?
Well, let me answer your first question. I think the board should be comprised of the people the community wants the board to be comprised of. So whether they're union affiliates or not, it's who the community chooses to be a part of that board. I'm a taxpayer too. So I'm insinuating that you're asking me if when we sit down to do teacher negotiations or admin negotiations, because I'm an educator, am I going to be giving the house away? I pay taxes too. I'm well aware of how the negotiations take place at the school district that I work at. I'm well aware that there's a 2% cap. There's no money to give out. So, you know, those negotiations are going to be bound by what's available. I don't see an issue with having 3 educators on the board. I actually see it as positive.
I'll just a follow-up, since Eileen, do you have any comment on that
Well,
last particular question?
Yes, I think I disagree with that. I believe that there should be at least one educator on the board, absolutely. But as I mentioned in my opening statement, I believe in a diverse board. We actually put forth a petition to increase our board from 5 to 7 members so that we can make it more diverse. And it can encompass more people in this community, like senior citizens, like special education children. So I definitely disagree with Mr. Grable on that point.
While I am an educator, and so are the other 2 gentlemen educators, I think I bring a different perspective to the table. Those gentlemen are teachers. I've been a teacher. I'm an administrator now. I'm the assistant, I'm the vice president of our administrators union at my school. So I bring a different perspective to the table. It's not, you know, the same teacher perspective that Mr. Amarando or Mr. Ferriello might bring.
So we have another question.
And for both of you, tell me how you feel about nepotism and cronyism.
Can I go first?
Sure. I don't think it should exist. There's no room for nepotism.
Okay?
Well, I'm going to agree with him. I've been very outspoken about nepotism and cronyism. I believe that the person who is the best for the job should get it. If that happens to be a relative, then so be it. But if it happens to be someone else and we skip over that someone else for a relative or a friend, I have a problem with that. There should be no nepotism or cronyism unless that person is the best person for the job.
I have a question. This is for both of you. What is your position on the Common Core testing? Did you opt in or opt out your children?
Eileen, why don't
Go ahead.
you go first? We'll alternate
Okay.
questions, unless it's a question directed just to one of
Okay.
you.
I've been a loud supporter of the opt-out movement. Last night at the Board of Ed meeting, I actually spoke about the modules that we now use as our primary source. I don't believe in Common Core, I don't believe in the testing, I don't believe in the modules. I actually opted out. My daughter here is the only one that has been affected by it. I've opted her out, even when it doesn't affect her anymore. She's in 10th grade. But I have been a very loud supporter of opting out your children for these tests that mean nothing to them.
I am an advocate of higher standards. I think our kids need to be challenged appropriately to compete with their peers nationally and globally. I don't think the Common Core was rolled out in an effective manner. We had cohorts of children who were conditioned to think and learn in a particular manner, and then on the fly we asked them to think and learn in a different way, and that didn't work out well, obviously, hence the backlash from parents and teachers. As far as my children, I don't think that's relevant to share with the public what I do with my kids. That's my personal opinion. I see a different perspective of what the end result is because I'm a high school principal now. There is an exit criteria that kids need to satisfy when you get to the high school. While the Common Core is really isolated to the middle levels right now, the elementary middle levels right now, these kids need to be prepared appropriately to satisfy the Regents' requirements to get out of high school.
Weren't they doing that though before Common Core was implemented? Our kids will graduate, especially in Connecticut, our kids were, 90% of our kids were meeting Regents standards.
I'd like
Yeah.
to rebut that as well.
But if you looked at the Regents, if you looked at the data that follows our kids, they were saying that they were not work ready and not college ready. So if you looked at some of that data, the curves on some of these Regents exams, you're passing 35% of it, and you're passing. So what they were saying is the rigor of those exams wasn't up to snuff with the rest of the nation.
I'd like to go back and just say that I recently had to take some college tours with my son, and we actually went to MIT, which is an Ivy League, and they don't care about Common Core. They actually think it's no good for our children, and although they haven't gotten any in, they've spoke to the high schools, and they're not in favor of Common Core kids coming in there. They're actually afraid to see these kids when they get there. At least that's from some of the admissions people that I've talked to, and MIT was just one of them. Also, the Common Core doesn't really prepare them for everything that they need. We're still not every child is going to college. We are using Common Core as college ready. Every child must go to college, but there are so many children that are not going to go to college. They're going to be plumbers. They're going to be blue-collar workers. They're going to be carpenters, and we're not encouraging them to do that. We're taking away their creative thinking by using this Common Core and these modules, and I just think it's a shame.
More questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
My dream for our district is eventually providing that AP is settled and that we've done everything we could to maximize the potential in AP. I'd like to eventually see our school district move towards IB and offer both programs. Either they can do an AP track, they can do an IB track. I believe an IB track will be a little bit more open to other students who are in the 80s, where AP is more geared to students that are in their 90s. I'd like to have your thoughts on IB, International Baccalaureate.
Good.
We did some research on the IB program when it was brought up a few years ago at the Board of Ed meetings, and I did a lot of research into it. And I think I've made that quite clear that it costs thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars for our district, and I don't think at this time it's good for our school. It also, the IB program, if you don't do the higher level and you just do the SL, I think it's called, then the scores are the same as the AP tests. They only take the higher level scores anyway, most colleges. So at this time, I don't think IB would be right for our district.
So then what are we offering our students?
I'm sorry?
What are we going to offer our students that are on an 80 track?
We offer them great AP classes. We can expand on what we have. We have great programs in Connecticut. And I think that if we expand on those programs, I know there's some academies being talked about now, a business academy, and some other STEM initiatives. I think those are the things that we need to expand on, instead of bringing in this other IB program that, again, costs way too much money for our districts and our taxpayers at this time.
I agree that the IB program is a very expensive endeavor. The other caveat to this is I think the AP program is compared globally. So not every school district offers IB. When every high school is going to offer AP. So these kids are going to be compared apples to apples. We have kids going into IB, they're not going to be compared to everybody as apples to apples because not every school district offers it. I think you have to have population to support IB. You talk about that 80s kid. Well, why don't we encourage that 80s kid and instill some academic confidence in that kid and see if we can get that kid to take on some more academic challenge and go into the honors program and then maybe get into the AP program.
So I agree with him on that.
One more question, please. This is in reference to the 5 to 7 member board. I'd just like to know, why did you deny the petition to be placed on the ballot when placing it costs $0? Do you think the taxpayers have a right to decide if they want to spend the money or not? I'm sorry, Mr. Gray.
Obviously. I got it. I asked several questions when we were talking about going from 5 to 7, and I'll share those questions with you. Is there any research that a 7-member board functions more effectively than a 5-member board?
Sure.
In the past, when there was a seat available or 2 seats available, did we have 5, 6 people vying for that seat?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the other question I asked.
If I could just
Those are
interrupt
two.
1 second on the, did you have anyone else? It's kind of a appointed position, so I'm sure half the public didn't really understand it, and there wasn't gonna be a vote for people to, it was an appointed position. It wasn't voted on by...
What was the point? My position?
Your position, it wasn't voted by the public.
No, but you voted on the board who voted on me. So you entrusted those 4 members to pick somebody to sit in that seat.
I'm not, that's not an
Let him
argument.
just,
Right.
let him just add, no, let him.
So my point being, when I asked those questions, I either got no answers, or I didn't get sufficient answers to support going from 5 to 7. Hence my no vote.
A no vote or no, as in no, you don't want to increase it?
I was asked to vote. Do we want to put it on a proposition? You know what I voted.
Well, I'm asking you.
I-
I know what you
I
voted,
said
but
no.
maybe he doesn't know what you voted. I'm just asking, was it a no vote or
I'm
you
gonna,
didn't vote?
I'm gonna interrupt. I guess the question that I would have for both of you, and it pertains to this subject, is just, in general, are you in favor of expanding the school board to 7 members? Rob?
If there was research that supports a 7-member board functions better than a 5-member board, I would support that. To date, I have not been provided that research.
I think I said this again in my opening statement. First of all, I was one of the people that did support the move from 5 to 7 members. I actually went out and got signatures to do so. But I believe in a diverse board. I work on a 9-member board right now, and we have productive arguments, productive discussion. We don't always agree, but the 9 members bring, all of us bring a different experience and a different perspective, and it works. So I agree with having a 7-member board, especially in a district our size with $184 million now budget. Most of the school districts with that kind of budget have 7 or even 9 members on their board.
I wonder if we went from 5 to 9 or 5 to 7, how many people would be vying for those seats? I mean, there's an open seat now, and there's only 2 of us.
Have more questions?
I'll ask another one.
Sure.
I'm a big advocate for the science research program that we have implemented in our high school. Again, it's in an infancy stage, it's only 3rd year in. I'd like to hear how you would both find ways to increase that program, because in my opinion, you have a science research Intel winner, I think it brings great accolades to our school, puts our school on the map. Sabo last year as a semifinalist, even have a semifinalist in the Intel competition is huge. Bayshore is spitting out winners. I eventually like to be better than at Bayshore High School. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on how we can improve that
I
program.
forget whose turn it is to go first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, why don't you go first?
Well, my daughter wants to be a forensic chemist, so for me, this is kind of an easy question. Of course, I want to expand the science program. Anything that's for the kids and that'll do good for the kids, that doesn't cost the taxpayers millions of dollars, then I want to do it. If research shows that it's not good for our children, or controversial, like the IBAP program, then I would be against that. But if it shows that it's good for children, and it's worth the money, and it's not going to kill us in taxes, then I'd be for that.
Very minimal to the district.
Then I would totally support that.
If there is a population of students that have the interest and desire to be part of this program, I'm all for that. A lot of what needs to be done, in my experience with Intel programs, falls in the lap of the advisor. They need outside resources. So when you look at Award Melville and they have their Intel people, their Intel kids who are placing in these competitions, many of their parents are doctors at Stony Brook. Many of their parents are researchers at B&L. You need these research, you need these support systems in place.
I have to argue with you, we don't have that type in Sable. Sable's my next door neighbor, so, and they're extremely
If you ask Walt what outside resources they have, I'm sure he would name a few. And I'm not saying we don't have them. All I'm saying is that the advisor needs to go get them.
Their advisor is the one that's,
Right.
so it's not that.
Right, you're right. I'm not saying we don't have them available to us, but the kids need somebody to guide them to go find those support systems.
I have one final question.
You're done.
Are you in favor of a 0.8% budget? Do you encourage the administration to bring it to 0%? Speak for both of you, sure.
Oh, thanks. Last night at the Board of Ed meeting, I asked that question. I asked why we were at 0.08 instead of 0%. When New York State did an audit on Connect Quad for the last 3 years, And it is shown that we, instead of using actual figures to budgeted figures, that we use a rollover budget. And we've actually overtaxed our residents $33 million in the last 3 years. So I asked why we didn't put it to a 0% budget. I didn't really get a direct answer, but they did say that perhaps next year we might be at a negative budget. So yes, I'm for a 0%. I think that after the last 3 years of going budget to budget rollovers, instead of actual to budget, that it should be at 0.
If 0% was feasible, I'd be for 0% too. I don't know what's feasible. I guess I would relate it to, if you run your household on X during this year, are you actually going to be able to run your household on X the following year with cost of living and inflation? It's difficult to do. Without cutting program, I don't know that a 0% is actually feasible.
Well, I think even with the .08, it's only $98,000.
Exactly. And we didn't cut anything.
Right.
Everything's
so you're not-
maintained.
So with $98,000 is not a big enough deal where they shouldn't have put it to 0. That's just my opinion.
I have a question actually for both of you. I'm glad to see that both of you are very interested in researching and seeing, really the pros and cons of everything, because that really is important. My concern is, I know we focus very much on the junior high and high school, and I'm curious more about the elementary schools. I feel like, we run along pretty well in them, and, you've had children go through, and, research has shown secondary languages are much more easily learned, and the content material, the children retain it better from a younger age. There are other districts in Nassau that implement secondary language from, I want to say kindergarten, first grade. How would you feel about putting money towards something like that in our district that really would further them educationally? And I do agree that we do have to compete globally, because that's just the way that the world is. And even for children that aren't maybe going on a college track, a secondary language will never be a negative, no matter what your career choice is. So what would be your position on maybe implementing that as part of the curriculum? While I do understand our curriculum faces challenges at this time, and also time constraints and what have you, I just think that there should be a little bit more enrichment in ways that truthfully will make the children think and experience, and also give them something to build on, not that we're starting out a secondary language when the kids are 12 and 13 years old. At that point, I think that there are plenty of children who probably would have done well with a secondary language, but because at that, how your brain develops, it's different. So what are your opinions on that?
Rob, why don't you go first?
It's funny, I have 2 regrets in life. 1, I can't play a musical instrument, and 2, I don't speak a foreign language fluently. So I would support that. My concern would be that we're going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. Are we going to be taking something away from them to offer them this other opportunity? But the sooner, if you do some research globally, these kids are learning English early on.
I wanted to send my kids to an immersion school when they were little.
Right.
Believe me, there's nothing close enough to us.
Right. So I would agree that that's important. It's just a matter of how you would do it, fiscally responsible, without taking something away that they need already.
I'm just going to agree with Rob. I actually have nieces and nephews. My nephews all speak Norwegian, and my nieces all speak Polish. And my husband and I are one language. So I feel bad that my children only have the one language. I wish that they would have learned a language earlier. It is a big regret of mine that they don't know a second language. Again, it would be you'd have to look at the cost to implement it.
More questions? In the back?
One of the candidates could speak about student longitudinal data systems, SLDS, and what they are.
What did you say?
I don't. Can you say that again?
Student longitudinal data systems, SLDS. Are you familiar with it?
I can tell you that I know nothing about it, but I would do some research.
Does anyone in this audience know what it is?
I'm assuming it's studying students in a longitudinal manner from
It's
across
data
their years
collection
through
on every
education.
students in every state at this point through federal, basically, funding and grants. And there was a good article in the Washington Post, I believe last year, where it was broken down. It's a very sobering article because it basically goes into how much data is collected on every individual student. And this includes such things as ethnicity, income level, discipline records, grades, test scores, disabilities, individual education plans, mental health, medical history, counseling records. It it goes on and on and on. All this very private information about students is collected, and there are like no safeguards in place for what this information is collected, who sees it, and who's it shared with. And I'm a little surprised that you've been on the Board of Education, but you're not aware of it?
I've been on the Board of Education for 2 months.
2 months, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still
Well,
wet behind the ears.
I didn't know your terminology, but I can tell you that I am a strong advocate against data collection.
Okay.
When the Common Core came out with their data collection company,
Yeah,
I was out there, I'd be out there with picket signs. I don't want anyone knowing those kind of personal things about my children. I monitor them now online. I have their passwords, I make sure who they talk to, I look at their friends list, and I don't believe in all this data that's being collected for our children to use them as consumers, basically, when they're my children. I don't want them having all that data, so I'm strongly opposed. I didn't know the terminology, but I'm strongly opposed to any sort of data collection, especially without parental permission or knowledge.
Well, the SLDS is kind of the universal term, it's known by different names like
I didn't know the
P20,
term, sorry, yeah, right.
But this is information that's, right here, that is tracked from birth or preschool through college and beyond.
I hate it.
Data is shared with vendors, other governmental agencies across state lines, with other organizations engaged in quote educational related research, and all without parental knowledge or consent.
Right, and I hate it. That's my bottom line, I hate it, I'm strongly against it.
Would either of the candidates make this information known on the Board of Education website and notify all parents in the district that this is happening?
I do it on Facebook now.
But in actually.
I'm not on the board, but I put out, I believe in transparency. I videotape the meetings, I put out every single bit of information that I can so that the community stays informed about things like this.
So if elected, you would do that?
I would
in your role as
continue
a
to do
board
that. I
member?
will continue to tape the meetings, even though the Board of Ed does it themselves. I'll do it from my perspective as well. I will continue to do that.
No, but I mean, if elected to the board, would you make this information known through your position? Like, would you make?
I wouldn't let the data get out there, but I don't think that we should be collecting all that data.
I think he's asking, would we let parents know that this is happening?
Oh, absolutely. I do that now.
But as a board.
I would
member,
continue to
not
do
just
so,
as a
yes,
process.
absolutely.
Rob, do you have
Absolutely.
a comment on that?
Yeah, I would do the same.
I have a question, just following up. You've mentioned transparency a couple times. You've gone to 70-plus meetings. You've been on the board for a couple months now. What steps do both of you think could be done with the board to make things more transparent? How would you make things more transparent?
You want to go first, or you want me to?
No, you can go. It's fine.
I believe, I've already asked, I write a document of every question that the public comes up on during public comment. And I ask, every question that I ask at public comment, I write down on a document on Google Docs and I publish it with the answers. I think that the school district can be doing the same thing. They can have a document for every person that comes up and asks a question, that it's asked in public, it should be answered in public. I hate when I get an answer that says, call me tomorrow and I'll let you know. I ask this question in public because I want everyone to know the answer. Because if I don't know about it, maybe a lot of other people don't know about it. So I believe that as a board member, we should be pushing that. We should make that transparency more. We should have more public input. We cut off we talk about community, and then we cut the community off after 3 minutes. I don't believe in that either. We wait till after the voting before the community can speak. I don't believe in that either. We need to bring our community in and let them know what's going on in the district, in any way that we can.
I would defer to the public and ask them, what steps do you want us to take to be more transparent? What is it that you feel we can do for you to keep you better informed?
I actually have, this is a question another board member had emailed me who couldn't be here, but it also has to do with community involvement. Do you think that the community should have more of a role in the budget planning process? And would you be in favor of some type of standing community budget advisory committee?
There is a budget advisory committee. If the community felt that they needed more of a voice in that, certainly would listen to the strategies and the suggestions.
There were requests made in the past to have a committee that would be essentially a standing committee, that the members wouldn't change year to year and that they'd have more of an involvement earlier in the budget process, as opposed to essentially being involved once the budget had already been set.
Patrick, I can tell you that while I was council president, we brought that up, and we did start our own budget advisory committee, and I think there are some of the members that were on that budget advisory committee are in the audience right now. I see Ed is one of them. And we did start early, because when you start a BAC in February and ask them to have that information by April, and you give them limited information, it doesn't bode well, and you can't get it done. So we did start it through council as a rolling thing, and a rolling advisory committee throughout the whole year. We then presented a full paper. Matt Lavery wrote up a full paper of all the suggestions that we had and gave it to the board, and we were ignored. So I fully think that we should have a rolling budget. I brought that up at many meetings, that it should be a committee, an ongoing committee, not started in February. Started right now at election time, started right the day after election when everybody's sworn in, start a new committee for the next year. Budget's finishing up now, you're voting on it on Tuesday, start the committee on Wednesday, and keep it going throughout the year.
I wasn't privy to the conversations that you were referencing in your question.
Sure.
You know, that Budget Advisory Committee is charged with coming up with a voice into this whole process. To get a group of people to start it and continue it, I'm assuming you're talking over a course of several years. Makes sense having people loop who were privy to what took place the year prior. I wonder how consistent you can keep that group together. You know, things change in people's lives and they move on. I guess if you had 2 or 3 that remained on it, they would serve as a resource for the others who joined. It makes good sense.
Okay. Can I ask you just one question?
No.
Just as it pertains to your experience in Mount Sinai, are there any things that they do in that district from either an administrative standpoint or even on their board that you feel would be productive to implement here in Connecticut?
My experience on this board, like I said, is still in its infancy. I'm learning more than I'm adding to these conversations right now. You know, my primary responsibility is at the building level. While I have indirect responsibilities at the district level where I work, my primary responsibility is at the building level. Really side conversations with some of the administrators about instruction and other things that we do at our high school. But when things come up that are relative to what we're talking about, I share my experiences at Mount Sinai. It's a different place, though. You know, I have 800 kids in my high school. We have 800 kids in the senior class, so to say. You know, so it's a different animal. But certainly, I think it's relative. My experiences at Mount Sinai will relate and correlate to what we talk about here at Connecticut, just maybe not a perfect fit.
Go ahead.
Even as recently as last night, we witnessed a contentious Board of Education meeting, and that happens quite often. And I believe it's because there are only 5 members of the board, and that it's very easy to get 3 members to take a particular stand on an issue. I lost my train of thought where I was going with that. Come back to me.
That's why I write
I
it.
want to make
You have another one behind you, Patrick.
Oh,
Go
okay,
ahead.
sorry,
Go
go ahead.
I actually have 2 different questions, but they don't, anyway.
Take
One
them
of them
take
is-
them one at a time.
Yeah, they're easy though. One of them is, and I know we obviously I asked you about the secondary language for the younger grades. The other concern I have is, now let me preface this by saying, I will support providing whatever accommodations to assist any child in need to the day I die. That is never my intention to take away from any child that struggles. I think as a community as a whole, forget even just the district, that's just how life should be. However, I do feel that there are children who are, I hate to use the term exceptional, because I think every child's exceptional, but who academics come easier to them. I'll just say that. And I think that we, budgeting wise, I was looking at like what we spend, on special ed versus what we spend on, enrichment. It's such a disparity in the numbers, it's unbelievable. And in certain states, being academically gifted is considered a disability. So, and that would be covered under the ADA and, the special education law and all that stuff. Going forward, I mean, do you have any ideas of what could possibly be done to bridge that gap, starting at an elementary level? When you have children, because I think it all trickles down in general. I mean, a lot of children, starting at a younger age, it comes quickly. Now your child can go both ways. As an educator, as a mom, your kid could become a disruption to the classroom because now you have a bored child. And I do believe that children sometimes just have to suck it up and you have to leave. But we need to have something in place. We're talking about STEM for the older kids. Again, you cannot build a house if you don't have a foundation. Your third floor is going to collapse. You can't expect all of these children, which again, we discussed Common Core, how it wasn't rolled out correctly. If you don't have a good foundation, it's very hard to start building that at some point. So going forward, I would hope, do either one of you have any considerations of perhaps implementing more enrichment into the younger grades? Not that the children have to wait till seventh grade before they can, have a more academically challenged experience.
Children need to be challenged at every level.
Absolutely.
The elementary level, the middle level, the high school level. Education is not cookie cutter, and there are going to be kids who we're going to have to mold our programs to accommodate their needs, whether they be special needs kids or whether they be exceptional kids. We have kids at Mount Sinai who have taken every AP class we offer, and they're juniors. So now what? You know what? Go take a class at Stonybrook. Go do an internship at B&L. You have to find ways to keep these kids challenged and interested.
Right.
So,
And I feel that we do a good job in the older
In the
levels, but I feel like the children, they flounder a little when they're younger if it comes very easy to them. And we do have the Sequest program, which is great. It's one day a week. It's good. It seems to me a much more enhanced ELA program, which is fantastic. It's great, wonderful. Such a small amount though in comparison. It shouldn't be just this one thing. It should be a daily.
I agree with you. I actually, my son is on the gifted end and was very bored in school. So bored that he disrupted every other child in class because he finished his work and flicked whatever he could at other kids because he was done. So it was very hard for him in the younger grades. Once he got to the older grades, of course, he was able to be challenged, and he went to the STEM high school. So I think we do need to do a lot more in the younger grades to challenge those kids. Sequest, my other daughter went to Sequest, and again, that's one day a week, so I agree with you. We do need to get those kids that we're labeling as maybe bad kids that really are just bored kids. And we need to get the teacher input on that and try to work.
Well, I just think it would be a support to the teachers, like what can we do?
Absolutely,
It has
right.
to come from both ends. It's good for the children, which is the number one priority.
Right.
But if you have, look, I know it's in a classroom, you teach at 3 levels usually, you have
Right.
3 different things. But there's always going to be those kids who are done with level 1, 2, 3.
Right.
And it's hard for the teacher. You can't, if you have to help somebody who's
We
struggling.
definitely need the teacher support, and we definitely need to put more of our funding into that.
That you guys
I
will
agree.
consider that.
I would agree with Eileen that we have to defer to the professionals who are working with these kids every day,
That's right.
who are observing these behaviors, and ask them why, and okay, now what do we do? And, can we support what you want to do?
All right, well, I'm glad to see that.
Absolutely.
And then the other issue,
Well, can I piggyback off that question? And then you can.
all right.
No, Mylene, you're not allowed to
It's funny
talk.
that she brings that up. It's because I'm only here about 9-10 years. I originally am from the city. My older child went through Catholic school, and he went through the public school later on. But my second son, he was tested into a gifted program in kindergarten. So kindergarten, first grade, he's in his gifted. What?
It's not developmental.
No, it's as long as.
Correct me if I'm wrong, go ahead.
Yes, well, it's pretty much what they call an accelerated track. So they have these kids that are tested in, and they're in regular track, or you're an accelerated track. In the city schools, you have the accelerated track, you have your mainstream track, and then you have also the children that have needs. Is that something that you can see this district going in? So now you have these children that are in accelerated track. I believe it's easier for the teacher to teach that group of children because they're on one page. It's easier to teach these group of children. Instead of teaching all 3 children in one classroom, now the teacher can fly with this group at their own pace. I think it's pretty much close to it.
But developmentally, the children are not, you can't really determine this.
I'll tell you. Let Candidates answer.
I'm sorry?
They're doing their own conversations.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, you gotta keep it to questions and not
Well,
your
that was,
position on things. So,
putting it in a track where you have an accelerated track from very young. kindergarten,
at the
first
elementary level, can you foresee the district having an accelerated track for, I guess, gifted
grade,
students?
kindergarten.
I think, I agree with what she said. At that level, I don't know if you can actually say that they're gifted or not at that level. I think it would be on an individual basis. You'd have to see, as, for example, my son, we knew that he was bored because he was finished with his test first. and he was flipping things and other things. I think you really would need to speak to the teachers in each class and find out which kids belong where. I don't know if you can actually pigeonhole them into a track at that young age.
Can you hear the responses in the back?
No.
Why don't you
We'll
use
use
the
the
microphone?
At those younger ages, there's so much more to learning than just the curriculum. There's a huge social aspect to what these kids are going through. So to declare a small cohort of kindergartners or first graders as gifted at that point and segregate them homogeneously, I don't think that would work well academically. As they progress into 6th grade, 7th grade, I think that's when you start to determine, you know, these are the gifted academic learners, and you start tracking those kids.
I guess in a city, that's what they do. So when you come out here, I guess the education's a little bit different.
You had a
Yeah,
second
you had a
question?
And that question will be, clearly, I think we could all agree that communication is an issue in our district, and it's probably an issue in every district on some level, in every business and what have you. You know, Connecticut struggled the last few years with a lot of bad press. My concern is educationally. I think that because we've been conditioned for so many years to say that we don't have X amount of money for different things, I feel like in the individual buildings, because I can't really put it on the Board of Ed, because you can't be in all these buildings all day long monitoring every little thing. I think a lot of times that the teachers don't want to ask for the supply that they might need to enhance their classroom experience because they've been told for so many years that there's no money. Now, I know we've had some more, like, we've had different chair people come in, but I would love to see a better sense of communication between the board and what have you. What are you planning to do to change the communication that we have from the top down to the bottom?
The question was, how can communication be improved from the top to the bottom within the district?
I wasn't aware of a communication issue from the instructional staff to administration and then to the board. But if that truly exists, we have to somehow instill some confidence in that instructional team that we're listening and that they shouldn't be afraid to ask for something that they need. Just be prepared to tell us why you need it. And then if it's feasible, we'll support it.
There's been a lot of contention in our district between the administration and the union, and I think that's part of our problem. I think we need to get rid of that contention first, and then maybe we'll have more cooperation with the teachers. They'll be able to come to the board or to the administration and ask for things without being told, no, there's not enough. I think that the money is there for these things. I think that there's a lot of administrative money right now that we didn't need to use, and we should be using that more for teachers and for the kids. And I think we can do that. I think we can fix that.
Question.
Rob, what did you say your involvement with the union was?
Where I work,
Yeah.
I'm the vice president of the administrators union.
Okay. So is that the same union as part of the teachers union?
No,
No?
no.
Can you explain what it is? I don't know.
So the teachers union is comprised of solely teachers, and at Mount Sinai there are 17 administrators. That's our union. So we have a different contract than the teachers did.
But does it fall under the same umbrella of the same union type of thing?
No.
Can I ask, what is your involvement with the Connecticut Teachers Union? And were they the ones who approached you about running for the board?
No. I have no involvement with the teachers union. My parents did receive some flyer, I think, that came from them, but I was unaware that it was going out. And did they approach me to? No, not at all. Nope.
How do you feel your position in being the vice president of the union to help or hinder negotiations with contracts that are coming up in the future?
Well, I think experience is always going to help a negotiation process. I mean, I'm familiar with several contracts, having been through that process before.
What do you think should be done with the contracts in this district now with the teachers?
I just started looking through the teacher's contract because that came across the board's laps a few weeks ago. There are a few items that I think need to be revisited, but with a 2% cap, you know, the whole negotiation process is pretty much pigeonholed.
The teachers union is supporting you, And I know that because I've gotten literature from the teachers' union.
I've heard that.
And
I
you are
appreciate
going
this support.
to, if you're elected board member, you're going to be asked to negotiate the teacher's contract. And for years in this district, people like myself and others in this room that have attended budget meetings for 20 years have fought long and hard to try to get the contract language tightened. And we always use the teachers' union because they're the largest union, but it's really all of the union contracts need to be tightened in terms of the language, so that people come in when they're supposed to come in, stay through the end of the day when they're supposed to stay through the end of the day, and they're not leaving after sixth period because it doesn't say that they can't in their contract. So they do. And I have real concerns that, again, your affiliation with the unions and your background coming up through Connecticut, that you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to tighten that language when the CTA is endorsing you, and they're not going to want to tighten the language on their teachers' contracts.
Right.
Now, if you're elected, we will have 3 union people on our board. How
Right.
can we, as a community, ask you or expect you to tighten that language for all unions?
I don't know that I have an answer that's going to satisfy your worries, but I'm a taxpayer too. And I'm not just going to give away the house because I'm a teacher and I'm an educator and the teachers union is evidently supporting me. I mean, I pay taxes also. The same taxes you pay.
But the reason the union supports candidates is so that they can get something in return. Let's face
Well,
it.
that's
Well,
not, you gotta ask, I mean.
I'm pro-student, and
Can I
if
ask a
teachers are
question?
pro-student, then I'm pro-teacher, so maybe that's what they were getting out of it. I don't know. I can't imagine that they think I'm just going to rubber stamp their contract.
I have a question.
Hold on, I think we have some more. Your question back?
I have a question. I just want to follow up on something. My name's Matt Labrie. You may have seen me at some of the board meetings. I know some of the familiar voices were there. Just to highlight a question that was asked before about communication. I think you've heard some of it here, maybe some of the grounds which is sitting on. The board, in my experience, has been a really interesting thing because as I've gotten to know all the different board members, they're all very nice people. I get along with them very well in like the lobby and in the parking lot. For some reason, I feel like it's difficult as a parent in the district or as a stakeholder of some kind to have a working relationship with the board that's not antagonistic. It's really curious how it happens that way. One reason why it might happen is that I know, having sat through a lot of board meetings, there's a lot of noise and not so much sound from public comment, right? A lot of public comment comes up and there's a lot of, I don't understand why, the paint's chipping off my house. You're a board member, you should fix that, or some of these things are totally unconnected. But I'm wondering what your approach would be to filtering sound from noise when you're in a board meeting, you're hearing a lot of angry people. What would be your metric for separating out the people who may have something to offer, who are willing to offer, who are willing to volunteer, how you would pick them out of the crowd, and then what kind of doors you would open to them to give them kinds of access, as opposed to, for instance, assuming that they must be up to, they're going to try and find out something or whatever, and putting barriers in their way. Do you have a metric to do that? Do you have experience doing that? What would be your approach to something?
I don't know that I have a definitive strategy for remedying what you're talking about. My tenure on the board is roughly 2 months, so I've been doing a lot of observing, and I understand exactly what you're talking about. It appears to me that a climate and culture has been created, of which is going to take time to change, and it's not going to be me that changes it. It's going to be the 5 people sitting on that board that change it together. So for me to give you a definitive answer of what I would do, right now I'm observing. The question really should be to the 5 of us, whoever those 5 members are, what are we going to do about this? Because I agree with you, there has been a climate and culture where there is a lot of business being brought to our attention that has nothing to do with what we're really worried about and talking about.
I'm eager to hear Eileen too on that. I know she's a troublemaker at the board meetings.
I am. I say a lot at the board meetings. I think that again, I've been very vocal about community input. And no matter what that community input is, we need to hear it, we need to listen. I've noticed being up at the podium on the other side, asking a question of the board, that I see them shuffling their papers, or they're looking the other way, or they're not paying any attention. And when I'm up there and I'm asking a question, I want the respect that I give them when they're speaking. So I think that all the community does need to be heard. I think the turnout there is very low because people feel like they're not getting anywhere in the district. I think that we do need to change that climate. We do need more community input. We don't have enough community input. When someone goes on a tangent, I think we should listen, because sometimes what they're saying, they need to get their voices out there, but what they're saying is actually good information. There was a gentleman that used to come all the time, an older gentleman, and I'll leave him nameless, and he used to rant and rave, and board members would get up and walk out of the room. But he actually had some good information that he was giving to the public that no one wanted to listen to, that giving to the Board of Ed that they didn't listen to. And I think that's a shame, and we really need to get those people back. One of them is actually a Bohemia Civic person who hasn't come to meetings in a while, and we need those people back at those meetings. They have good information. They've lived here for years. They're seniors. They're taxpayers. And just because they're ranting doesn't mean that what they're saying is not consequential. It is.
There used to be school board meetings every month at an elementary school and one in central office. That stopped because of union at one time was picketing, and it wasn't good for children to see this, so it was stopped. It was never brought back. How would you feel about bringing that back?
I think I've talked to you about this at several meetings. I disagree with going to different schools. I think the Board of Ed meetings should be held in a central location, because otherwise you never know where it's going to be. Sometimes seniors don't have access to a computer, or someone can't find it on the calendar or on the website. Where is the meeting held this month? Oh, it's over at Sycamore and they're over at Duffield. So for me, I've always maintained that it should still be held at central office, of course, unless the crowd is too big, which then we come here. So I think that it should stay there. I know I disagree with you, Lee, on that, but I'm sorry.
I know, because I feel as though there was much more exposure for the board to meet the school, meet the PTA, meet the children, and I think by stopping that.
I feel that the board does go out. They do go out to all the events. I know I see
It's not
Mylan
the
at a
same.
lot of events. I do see Craig at different events to meet the people and let them know who they are. But I think the meetings themselves should be held in a central location, just for consistency's sake.
What was the initial intent of having it at an elementary school, and did it satisfy that intent? Did you get a different audience? Was it out of convenience for a different
It wasn't our convenience, but that's the way I started doing it. And we met children, we met the parents, the children performed. The PTA had little goodies. PTA stayed there, parents stayed. They learned about what a Board of Education does versus, they don't know who we are. We don't know who they are now. It's separate. And I think that hurt the district. I think by meeting once a month at a different building, I think it was maybe on six months, 6 meetings at different schoolhouses that year, that it helped bring the community together. Things that stopped bringing the community together are calendars, notebooks, not being in the schoolhouses, and then you blame the community for not knowing what we're doing. It's not the community's fault. We're stopping all the things that bring us together. So
I guess to answer your question, minus any feedback from the community saying that this was happening and now we're unhappy that it's not happening, I would side with Eileen that consistency of where the meeting locations are is convenient.
And of course, if the community wanted it at different meetings, I wouldn't be adverse to that. But I've heard from the community. I've asked the seniors that have been at these meetings. I said, do you want them at other buildings? And I've gotten an answer, no. They hated it. They wanted to go one place, and they know what time it is and which day of the month it is, and that was good enough.
So don't complain about the community when they don't correspond.
I have a hypothetical. If the budget fails, can you name a few things that would be on your contingency list?
You've got the mics.
That's a bad question, Mylan.
It is.
Because nobody wants to cut anything.
That's right.
Hey,
I mean, you got to start with what's not a requirement. You got to start looking at athletics. You got to look at the stuff that's not a requirement in the academic areas. which is painful because now you're talking about staff too. Nobody wants to ever answer that question.
I refuse. No, just kidding. I think, again, as I said, we have a big administrative budget. That should be the first thing that we look at before we look at programs and services, if we go to contingency. Unfortunately, that's never the case. And from what I understand, there's some laws about how it has to be distributed. I'm not sure of those laws. Of course, I'm going to go do my research on that to make sure. But the first place we should cut should never be children, should never be programs and services. We should start with the administration. But I don't want to cut anything, obviously.
So, I like the gentleman's question. It's very important. It's like a very meta question. It's kind of, it pertains to this meeting, it pertains to any meeting. The ability to speak concisely and effectively in a public sphere. And it's something that kind of distinguishes public schools from boarding schools. And if you notice, many politicians go to boarding schools, the Calhoun, Horace Mann, et cetera. And one of the things they teach is the active literacies, the art of public speaking, the art of communication, so that you can actually adjust your level of speaking to your audience. Whether you don't want to overspeak to them, if you don't want to talk down to them either, you can just get it just right. And you notice in very public speaking, at board meetings, et cetera, people tend to ramble, they tend to be incoherent, they tend to, get sidetracked. But all those people went through public schools. Like, they weren't given those skills, those tools in order to speak effectively in a public sphere. Why is that, and what can a public school do different to effectively change that?
Do you mean with children or with the adults at the meeting? Because I'm not going to change any adults at the meeting.
Private boarding schools, for one, they have a lot of debate teams where they have to effectively argue a point, and it can be, and then you have to flip it. You have to argue the complete opposite. And that, basically, there's muscle memory, there's sort of just learning how to speak effectively.
I think we do have some of those classes in our district now. I actually went to Catholic school, so we did have a little bit of that. But my daughter has come home and said that, actually she talked about the abortion topic the other day, and she said, Mom, I have to pick a side that I'm not for or against, and I have to argue the other side of it. And she actually did that and made a persuasive argument for the other side. I'm not going to tell you which side she picked, but she did do that. So we do have a lot of those programs in there, and our English teachers do incorporate that into their lessons. All my children have done that. They've picked the other side. So I disagree that we don't have the boarding school. Maybe we're not as rigorous as the boarding school, but we do have those programs in here. Could we encourage more of that? I think that would be a great idea. I love that.
Does the high school have a debate team, for instance?
Yeah.
Yep, we do.
It does? Okay. Great.
And my son is currently taking a public speaking class.
Okay.
We have Model UN teachers.
Right, and we have Model UN as well. We have the Model UN, that's a club, correct?
I don't think we can expect kids to do something that we don't give them the opportunity to do. Especially, they're not going to do it well if we don't give them the opportunity to do it. And I think instruction has changed a little bit over the years where kids are doing more of that, more of public speaking, more of explaining themselves, their thought processes out loud. For example, if you go into a high school math class, very often kids are at the board explaining to their peers how they arrived at this answer, vocally. There are speech classes, but the biggest component is if our kids are not doing this well, then we need to provide them more opportunities to do it so that they're practicing it. We need to model it for them as well.
I had another question I wanted to ask, just following up on something that Lee mentioned, the PTAs. Right now, I'm the outgoing president of the Council of PTAs, and I've seen a decline in participation of the PTAs over the last few years. That follows probably a change in economic model that has fewer hours at home for parents, more hours on job. It stretches everyone's ability to work in the civic sphere quite considerably. I was just interested to hear in terms of maybe a philosophy of administration of the district or educational philosophy, if you, as parents with kids in the school district, could give the parents one bit of advice about the one thing they could do to positively impact the school district, the schooling in the district, what would that be?
You want it or me? I'm going to speak on my experiences at Mount Sinai because they're a little more vivid to me. I think parents, when they get involved in the PTOs and the PTAs, they think they have to be fully involved in the PTOs and PTAs. So if we could communicate to them that, if you could do one or two events to be involved. You don't have to take on this whole thing yourself. And if we get more parents to understand that, you'll have a bigger population of parents getting involved and sharing that responsibility for our kids.
I don't know if you're talking about our issue here with our PTA, and I can tell you what our issue here is with our PTA. It's that National does not support what our school has shown that we supported, which is opting out our kids. 75% have opted out our children. 75% of our parents are saying that they want other diploma options, and National PTA does not mirror that same sentiment. As far as getting people involved, we've done it, Matt. I've been the president on the board with you. We get the people involved. We have to get them motivated in a different way. It's not just bake sales once you get to the higher levels. And I think we get the same 6 or 7 people, as you know, that always volunteer. How do we encourage them to do more? In today's climate, Matt, with everyone busy with their jobs and their lives, I think it's a difficult thing to do. But we have to keep trying. You can't just give up.
One of the other concerns I hear often is that it's a parent-teacher association. And very often the teachers, their participation is limited in these organizations.
That's
I
correct.
bet if we get more teachers involved, more parents might follow suit and get involved as well.
Are you involved in the PTA here, in your school,
I am indirectly involved in the PTA here.
Boston?
Yes.
I'm involved in the PTA. I think I mentioned.
My wife's involved in the PTA.
A follow-up question to that, you said that the sort of local PTA on several subjects have sort of really diverged from the national PTA. Do you feel it's reached the point where the local PTA should basically separate from the national PTA?
Great question, because we just brought this up at council. Yes, I absolutely, I brought it up 3 years ago when I was president. I wrote a scathing letter to National. Well, it wasn't scathing, but I told her my displeasure on that we're sending our dues to them and they're not listening to us. We've actually, Matt just had, he's the immediate president now, just had us bring back to all the units, do we want to move ourselves away from PTA, look into being a PTO or even a PO if teachers don't want to get involved, and be a parent organization instead of the PTA, and following their rules and giving them all our money to lobby for things that we don't believe in. So yes, we've already started that process, and I believe the new president that will be coming in next year is going to continue on with that process.
Can I ask a question?
Rob, did you want to comment?
I don't have enough knowledge to answer that question, sorry.
Yeah, you're against Common Core, you're against the testing, but once they get to school, what I was told, the SATs and the Regents, and now the SATs are all going to be Common Core based. And if you believe your children should not be tested in high school, in middle school, how do you think they're going to do on the SATs?
Well, I can tell you right now, my daughter will be one of the first ones to take the new SATs, and I think it's horrible. She was not given a foundation. She was taught from 7th grade till now 10th grade. So she's only had 3 years of Common Core. She has no idea what the basis is. And I hate that they're changing it over to the SAT. I think I'm lucky that she's bright and she can get through it, but there'll be a lot of kids that won't be. I also noticed, again, on my college tours with my older daughter, not so much with my older daughter, with my son, I asked them about the SATs, and they're actually drawing away from the SAT and the ACT testing. They're actually not using those scores as much. So I think you might see a big change there too. Right now, a lot of people are saying the SAT and the ACT is just a money grab, and the colleges are starting to say, if it's going to be Common Core based, we're not going to use them. We're going to do it in other ways. We're going to pick kids in other ways. And we have some college professors here that can tell you that as well.
Can I just speak to that for a second? Because my son is going through the process now, and I find it very different. The need for the SAT and the ACT is what's differentiating them from the academics. It's very hard to tell from a school district, they're saying, from a district point of view, whether or not there's teachers' assistants in the grades that are given, or whether or not it's a truly earned grade. And what they're using is that SAT or that ACT to kind of differentiate, to see if there is commonness to grade you're getting academically, and those that you're taking at a standardized level. And
Well, again, when I took my son, I specifically asked those questions to the admissions officers. One was MIT, one was Olin, Frederick Olin College, another was Bourne College right here, and then we also went to RIT. And each one of them said when they switch it over to Common Core, each one of those admissions officers said to me, when they switch it over to Common Core, they're starting to pull away from that. And Adelphi University, we have someone here, are they for, I mean.
Hold on, time
All right.
out. Let's let Rob answer the
Okay.
question first. I know if you want to ask a
Well,
question,
no,
it's fine.
that was my question.
But
That was my
it's
answer.
not fair to both of you
Right.
if we turn it into a conversation. So.
I was enjoying this.
Sorry.
I'm a proponent of the rigor and the higher standards that accompany the Common Core. Our kids need to be challenged. I go into classrooms every day, and when kids are cognitively challenged, we've conditioned them to wait and seek adult help. That's not good. They need to be problem solvers. When they're, cognitively challenged and they feel uncomfortable because they don't know, the rigor needs to prepare them for what to do next. The testing, I wasn't a fan of. The way it was rolled out, I wasn't a fan of. Tying a teacher's livelihood and their evaluation to a student's test score, I'm not a fan of. The rigor of the curriculum, I'm a fan of. Our kids need to be able to compete nationally and globally with their peers. And let's call a spade a spade. Taking standardized tests, part of life. You're going to have to do it to get out of high school, you're going to have to do it to get out of college, and you're going to have to take them to get a job. It's just part of life. We need to prepare our kids appropriately, and they need to be able to take a test. They need to know what that feels like.
I went to Catholic school all my life. We took Regents tests. Everybody took them. Today you ask a kid what 9 times 9 is, they don't even know. Where are we going? We keep saying we don't have to take these tests. When they get out in the real world, that somebody asks them to do the square root or anything, D-square, anything like that, they have no idea without this. We're losing the kids. Education is losing them. If the teachers don't start teaching our children, we're in trouble. Instead of just worrying about their salaries. I love hearing about the budget every year. We gotta worry about the kids. 90% of the budget goes to the salaries. I was union all my life. My parents were union, my uncles were union. We asked for $2, we were lucky to get $1.50. The union asked for $3, we give them $4. Somewhere along the line, you're looking at all the seniors here. This year, I've lost 12 of my friends that moved out of Connecticut because they can't afford it. Great. Some other clown is gonna come in to pay $13,500 in taxes. It's gotta stop too. We keep worrying about this budget, we worry about the teachers, we gotta worry about the kids. I love when I hear that they can't buy this, they can't buy that. Why not? We give them everything they want. It's gotta come to a stop.
What's your response to the 13 people that moved out of the district?
All seniors, what happened for me?
That's Long Island. That's
Yeah.
not just Connecticut.
Well,
Right.
They wanted to come to Connecticut
What's that?
because it was so good. But they're finding out they're doing a lot better outside.
And that's not just affecting the seniors. I mean, you're getting kids out of college that are out of here too, because they can't afford to live here. It's unfortunate. It's a bigger problem than the schools though. That was for Mr. Croce. You guys should talk to Mr. Croce about that.
Do you have any comment, Eileen?
Sure. First of all, I went to Catholic school also, and I know my times tables. It was beat into me. My knuckles still hurt whenever you talk about it. I don't think the Common Core teaches that, though. They're not teaching the kids the simple math. Without the computers, the kids don't know how to give change, and I have a problem with that. As far as the taxes, again, I pay taxes as well, and my husband just fell ill, and taxes are killing us. So for me, the Common Core and the rigor and all that goes with that is just a money grab from us, and it's just raising our taxes. I don't think anybody here disagrees that we need to challenge our children. I challenge my children all the time. If they ask me how to spell a word, I'm not giving them the answer. They have to spell it, and then I'll let them know if they're right or wrong, or I'll make them go look it up. My child here can tell you. But I think that we also need, besides these challenges, we need to find a way to balance challenging our children with the money, and I don't think Common Core is the way to do it. I don't think the testing that they are taking is helping them at all. The tests that they take, we don't even get the grades. We don't even see the test. The teachers don't even see the test. I don't think it helps these children at all. So back when we were in Catholic school, the teacher made the test for us. She knew it was on that test, and we knew what our grade was after that test. That's not what's happening here, and that's what I find is the problem. As far as people moving off Long Island, it's a global thing, and I encourage my children now. There's a lot of taxes here, and unless you get a really good job, you're gonna have to move somewhere else. You can't stay here. But make sure you take mommy and daddy with you.
Have any other questions?
I'm sorry. Piggybacking on that, you had mentioned, I'm sorry. It's a little taken back, I expect to go that way. You had mentioned that you're for raising the standards for our children, which I wholeheartedly support. I think that we should always, shoot for the top, and hopefully we get it, but if we don't, at least we're as high as we're gonna go. As far as the Common Core, we can all agree, was not rolled out correctly, and I know that you don't like Common Core, and I know that you understand, you like components of it. This is what I'm taking from it. I could be incorrect. If you're not for the Common Core, and not just the way that the rollout went, what curriculum do you think we should be using?
I think we can go back to textbooks. Right now, I said last night at the meeting, we're using the modules. I spent hours and hours on Engage New York, and I looked at the modules. And I'll tell you, one of the modules that sticks in my head that I read for a third grader, it was about a wife who was sitting on her bed with a hair clip in her hand, and she was sad. And her daughter came into the room and said, "Mommy, why are you sad?" And the child, this third grader, is supposed to infer as to why this mother is sad. And then it was said in there that the hair clip was neither the mother's nor the daughter's. That's just inappropriate for a third grader. That's just one of the things I found. I won't even get into the math modules. And when I say that I research things, I think the people here that know me know that I spent hours upon hours on those sites, and I hated them. They're inappropriate. The content is way above their... If you're a third grader, you don't need to infer anything from that paragraph.
I do have a third grader, so I will tell you we have not gotten anything home like that. However, I'm not going to lie, there were certain things that I was not keen to with the start of the Common Core, as
Right.
far as the reading.
I think there's too many mistakes in them. I'm not
But the
against
modules
higher
are
standards,
meant to be, they're a guideline, they're not meant to be.
but we're using them in our district right now as a primary
You have
source.
to keep it to, I'm sorry, you have to keep it to questions, so.
So what would you do to change that?
I would say that the teachers should be able to use other resources, such as textbooks, and that the primary source should not be the Engage New York modules. And last night we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on these rewritten Engage New York modules, and our teachers don't want to use them. Why do we spend all this money on these modules that our teachers don't want to use? It's a
Rob,
problem.
do you have a position on the use of the modules?
Should I answer that question first?
Yeah, you can answer that question, and as a follow-up, if you have a position on
Sure.
the use of the modules.
I think we might want to start from the top down and ask college officials, university officials, employers, what are you seeing that our kids can't do right now? And then take that feedback, share that with teachers, and have them draft a curriculum that accommodates that data. You can't just throw stuff against a wall because this doesn't work. You need data to drive something. So to me, that would make sense. This is the whole purpose of this. These kids are getting out of high school and they're not college ready and they're not work ready. Well, what is it that they can't do? And let's draft a curriculum to accommodate that. Teachers draft a curriculum to accommodate that. As far as the modules, I'm of the opinion that they're a supplement. And I would say to my staff, here are the modules, go through them, use what you think is good, and don't use what you think is bad. And supplement what you need to supplement.
All right, I'm going to say we have about time for maybe 2 more questions, and then I want to give the candidates an opportunity to give a little closing summary. Anybody have any other questions, specifically topics that we haven't covered yet tonight?
All right, I know this sounds stupid, and I am a senior, but I have no idea what you're talking about with modules. What are they learning? What is this in education now? Instead of books that they read, or whatever.
They're pretty much they're instructional guides that accommodate the Common Core. So if a teacher is asked to teach algebra, there are 8 or so modules that tell this teacher, on day 1, you're going to teach this. On day 2, you're going to teach this. So it's really a script for teaching and learning.
Yes,
ago, we called them lesson plans.
Yeah, but they got to write those.
They got to write
They got to
Right,
write
teachers
those.
got to write those.
These are given to them.
Right. They have to follow it, exactly.
I have one last question, and then I'll get out of your way. If I don't get home soon, I'm gonna get garroted when I get there anyway. A couple years ago, I know some people in this room or in that room, a former superintendent of the school district, in response to a question, told me, and this is as direct a quote as I can give it, that people in administration and in school leadership were not willing to lay down in front of the tanks of state policy if it threatened their employment and their position. I'm wondering what you would be willing to do if the state, if you saw that a state mandate was prohibitive and stood in the way of quality education, stood in the way of quality budgeting, how far would you take your objection to the state policy? For instance, the school district administration this year issued several letters, strongly worded letters to the governor expressing their discontent with the policy. The last time I checked, the last thing in the world the governor cares about is strongly written letters from school districts that express discontent with his policies. We, as individual citizens, have very little leverage. You, as members, elected members in the public interest, would have slightly more leverage. The administration that you oversee would have even more leverage, possibly. How far would you take a disagreement with state policy if you had one?
Well, to start, I think we have a genuine responsibility to advocate for our kids. So I don't think it stops until it's heard, based on what we need to do for our kids. As a board member, I guess you would, if it's not a letter, you got to go talk to somebody in person and put your face in front of somebody else's face to make sure that they hear you. I wouldn't be concerned about them saying, getting a slap on the wrist as a board member. I mean, I would do it as a principal too. I would advocate for my kids in the building.
I agree. This is a volunteer position. What's the worst they can do? Remove me from the position? That doesn't mean that I'm going to stop speaking and stop yelling. Again, I'm involved in the Runcockam Civic. I see the legislators, Tom Silmy, Tom Croce. I'll go up to their offices, I'll knock on their door, and I'll stand outside their door until they listen. I'm pretty loud and obnoxious that way, so I don't think I'd have a problem with that at all. He agrees. My husband and my children agree that I'm loud
This is
enough.
what democracy looks like. I gotta go home or I'm gonna get beat up. Thank you.
Any final questions on issues that have not yet been addressed? Otherwise, I want to let the candidates just give a quick closing. Anybody else? Okay. All right, yeah, Rob, why don't you go first since I leaned in the opening question.
I think our conversation here tonight kind of summarizes our philosophies and ideologies. I guess I will close with a statement that I feel that my time as a resident in the Connecticut community, my time as a student, my experiences as a parent of 3 kids going through the school district at this time, coupled with my professional experiences, have prepared me well to represent the greater Connecticut community. So I would encourage you guys to get out and vote. I appreciate your attendance here tonight. I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me.
I see that Rob and I do agree on a lot of things. There are very few things that we disagree on. I thank all of you for coming out tonight to listen to us. I've been to all the meetings. I continue to go to the meetings. Win or lose, I'll continue to be an advocate for not just children, not just teachers, but seniors, taxpayers, parents. Everyone in this district, to me, is important. So win or lose, Rob's a good man. I think I'm a good person. I'll still be there, and I hope that you guys just all get out and vote on May 17th. Thank you.
All right, just
Oh, I turned it
that
off.
Just real quick, again, a quick round of applause for both of our candidates. I think everybody agrees no matter who gets elected, we have 2 very good quality people and good members of the community, and we really can't go wrong. It's a good testament to the community that we have two excellent people who are running for the position. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for your time. Just the only other thing I have to say is our next meeting is, it's Wednesday, June 8th is the next Bohemia Civic meeting. So please do your best to attend, and hopefully we can increase turnout. So
And-
thank
and
you, everyone.
Please, if you can encourage anyone that hasn't been able to attend tonight, Ronkonkoma Civic is having their Meet the Candidates tomorrow night at RMS. So if anyone of your friends that couldn't make tonight's meeting are able to make tomorrow night's meeting, and they can hear about us, maybe we'll talk about some different things, we'd love you to attend that as well. Thank you.